Hello, friends. Host Eric here is talking with famous people. And this morning we're talking about how extroverted intuition is the worst tool function. The reason I say this is because, hi, Geo Niggy Yugi. The reason I say this is because, hi, Estavo Segundo. The reason I say any is the worst tool function, what I'm really saying is SE is a nasty fucking polar to have. You don't want to have SE polar. SE polar is a bitch and a half. I typed this INTP last night, right? And at the end of it, he was just like so wanting certainty about the thing and so unable to embrace certainty even if I gave it to him. It was like, yeah, but there are these other possibilities. And I'm just like, oh, you poor guy. You poor guy. With any of the tool function, it's like, I can put that shit to bed. No problem. It's like, okay, I'm decided on this. I might change my mind later, but I'm not going to direct any more attention to it. If you got any of the tool function, you're approaching everything with coming up with more ideas. How frustrating that must be. It's I mean, I get that all the polars have their own dramatic deficit, and certainly, is it continually researching options and never making decisions? Yeah, basically. This INTP had been going back and forth between INFP, INTP, whatever. I said, listen, there is no chance you're an INFP. I asked him the bully question. I asked a bunch of FI questions to make sure. Like when I asked him the bully question, which is, your kid comes home from school and a bully's stolen his lunch and he's upset. And he said, I tried to tell the teacher, but the teacher was really busy and didn't pay any attention. And before I knew it, nobody ever did anything about it. What do you do? And he gave me a number of possible things. Well, what else could you do? What else could you do? What else could you do? And I said, well, how long, if I kept asking that question, how long would it take you to get to tell your child to put himself in the bully's shoes and realize the bully must have something horrible going on in his life in order to do that? And he's like, no, never. I would never get to that point of saying that. I said, okay, well, for that answer and for many others that are equivalent, hi, Johnny Two Guns. You are not an INFP. I think FE polar is pretty dramatic. TE polar is actually quite dramatic too. It's just you won't recognize it if you're not in an intimate relationship with somebody. Kimberly yesterday was like, can you help me push this arch thing down into the ground, this metal arch she bought? I went to go push it and I was like, but hold on a second. None of these nuts and bolts are tightened. It's like, you just didn't even finger tighten all the nuts and bolts on this thing. It's about to fall apart. Like nuts are falling off of bolts all over the place here. And she's like, yeah, I was gonna finish doing that, and I'm like, Kimmy, and you didn't even put it together right. Look at these what about these two? She's like, I don't know where these things go. Those are kind of important pieces, Kimmy. Oh, Sreddy Chandran, don't cry. Don't cry, Sreddy Chandran. Bye, Melandrix. I'm sorry you can't stick around. We will have fun without you. Thank God Melandrix is gone. Now we can have fun, finally. He was totally a wet blanket. You're right about that, Sreddy Chandran. Any tool users will never be bored, even without possessions. So shove it up your ass, society. That's kind of true. Go minimalist, burn all furniture is problem solved. I am trying to go more minimalist around here. Let me tell you, Senjen. What that means to me is convincing Kimberly to throw away more things. it's an ongoing struggle because every time we're lining, there's this joke on The Simpsons one time where Marge is, Marge is like, I have some spare time right now. What should I do with it? I know. I'll think about things I might want to buy. And then she sits there and goes, Kimberly's like that, except she doesn't just think about things she wants to buy. She just goes through OfferUp on her phone all the time. It's like, this is her. One of the things she'll do, for example, which is really strange, she'll go through OfferUp to see if she got a good deal on the thing that she already bought on OfferUp before. So she's still looking at chain link kennels, which we got one of those for the chickens to be in. It's like an extra area to keep them in if we don't want them out running around the whole yard. I saw her looking those up last night on OfferUp on the phone when we were lying in bed, and I'm like, Kim, we already have one of those. She's, I know, I'm just checking to see if I got a good deal. What do you conclude if you conclude that you got a bad deal? I mean, do you just feel bad about yourself or what? What an incredible waste of time. It seems like to me, Or just in general going through OfferUp and looking at things that she might want to buy. Ooh, look at this bed frame. We could replace our current bed frame with this bed frame. It's only $25. Polar SE is the path to world peace. I don't know about that. I think Polar SE is the path to talking about world peace. Somebody already did that 2,000 years ago, Shreddy Chandran. It was Jesus. Yeah. In case you weren't aware, okay. He's this dude with long hair who's really into fish and wine and bread. It's like he ate nothing but fish and wine and bread all the time. That's what he's famous for. What up, Shreddy? Says LJ. Jesus was crucified. Yeah. And you know what? Unlike usual with him, it wasn't a metaphor. Yeah. That's the crazy thing is almost every time you say that someone's been crucified, it's a metaphor. Unless you're talking about Jesus. Then it's not. People can do amazing things in the world for sure. I would say that in some ways, Kimberly is the single most powerful person I've ever met, in the sense that, I consider myself a bit of a narratives expert, but that woman has the capacity to communicate in ways that they win the argument without winning the argument, So she's very persuasive in her own way without making any obvious effort to be persuasive. So, that's the thing. Yeah, FE tool users can get away with anything. You notice I didn't say FE, the worst tool function. What happens when a light bulb goes out in your house, then, Jen? They move. They say, oh, I guess this house is broken. Let's move now. That thing happened last time, too, with the lights breaking in the house. And so we had to move again. If Jesus was TE polar, how did he figure out how to walk? Take that, typologists. Jesus was an ENTP. He was FI polar, actually. It's the only thing that makes sense. I mean, he could have been an ESTP, I guess. That's the other possibility. Well, because otherwise, if he wasn't FI polar, he wouldn't have washed those people's feet because it would have been like, ew, I don't want to do that. You know? So obviously he was FI polar. Makes it clear. Now, I want to stress a couple of other things. Number one, God doesn't have a type, God is all types. And number two, the Holy Spirit is transtypal. He's the only transtypal person in the universe. This is so meta. You're inning about any being the worst tool function and inning about any tool users not being SE enough. Okay, well, that's a good point, Freddie Cameron. You might say that it's a little bit reductively or reductively navel gazing. I guess that's assuming there's you can see that there's something wrong with navel gazing. I've been spending most of my 48 years looking at my navel, and I'm still not sure what it looks like. I just know that it's round. And it's got a certain scrotal quality to it without being related to my testicles at all. Jesus wasn't FI polar, to borrow your catchphrase. He had too much moisture. No, he displayed a lot of moisture. Now, look, here's the thing. Look through the Bible. How often do you hear Jesus saying things like, I feel sad today, or, ooh, I really love this kind of fish and bread and wine? You never hear that shit. He's always talking about other people, right? Third slot F8. And how desperate is that guy for affirmation? Please, 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 please view me as the son of God after I'm dead. Don't care about it right now while I'm alive, because that's going to backfire. If I make a big fuss about it now while I'm alive, it's going to backfire. Right? FI is private about their feelings, but Jesus is public about his forgiveness. Jesus wept, shortest verse in the Bible. Probably somebody told him he wasn't very good at being the son of God. He doesn't have a very stout self-concept, so that caused him to cry. You know? Or he forgave everyone because he didn't want to feel rage resentment. Well, I mean, maybe he forgave them only contingent upon their agreement with his logical arguments. I suspect that part was left out of the Bible, but was actually what happened. I think that Jesus didn't forgive anybody until they agreed with him that he was right. Then he forgave them. But they left that part out. His best friend got his head cut off? Steve? Jesus' best friend Steve? I don't remember that part of the Bible. And then did Steve come out and he said, yo, Jesus, what up? And then they did cut off Steve's head. Second shortest verse in the Bible. Come at me. I know that's an unpopular opinion. FI DOMs and FI polars can have similarities. I agree. Well, because both, look, the thing about, I would say that FI and TI, foremost, are both judging functions, deliberation functions. And they're both ways of saying, I can determine myself what's right and wrong. And TI is correct about that. FI is a little bit incorrect about that, but that's okay because, it's better to be incorrect and whole than correct and hollow. Okay. Roiziamos. Hey, there's no such thing as black people. Okay. I don't appreciate your racism. He was a Jew. I don't think they had hippies back then. Was he gay? There's nothing to indicate he was. Yeah. Cite your sources, please. Jeez. Jesus ate Christ on a hockey stick. FI is not incorrect. Oh. Well, it's not incorrect so much as it is entirely arbitrary. Well, only by modern definitions. Back in that time period, he was considered very, very trendy, I guess you'd say, in his dress. MemeGenerator.com is a very, very trusted source. Ahmed Assam, hello at line at. Hello lat at underscore at. At underscore at what? I wonder if you could have additional ats in your email address. If my name were like ER at C STRAUSS at gmail.com, it would let me do that. Probably not. So anyway, back on topic, SE Polar. And SE Polar means any tool function. Any tool function is the worst tool function to have because it's not a tool function that resolves anything ever. It's not a tool function that does anything ever. It's not a tool function that interfaces with other people at all. It's an action function as your tool function, which sounds great, except the only action you're taking is always conditional action. It's like, well, presumably I could do that action over there. And, if I consider long enough, I might have a firm deliberation about it. I think it's a little bit worse even in INFPs than in INTPs because they got it's not only is it SE Polar, it's SE Polar soaking wet. So it's like extra unmotivated or something. You're so clickbaity, Eric. You're playing into the INXP self-absorption and narcissism. You're so giving me too much credit. It's what happened to be on my mind because I typed an INTP last night and I went to bed shaking my head thinking, that poor guy. You heard JC was INFJ? Oh, well, my position is he was FI Polar. So, I don't know. That makes him ENTP or ESTP. It could be ESTP. He doesn't seem particularly ideational. I'd say he might be an ESTP. He actually did some things. Like, for example, if he'd been an ENTP, he would have transformed the water into wine, but only like half of it maybe. And then it would have started being, some of it would have been wine, some of it would have been this weird kind of new alcohol-y thing that he came up with. And then he would have gotten bored and started changing the fish into different things and changing the loaves into whatever. And then all of a sudden he would be, okay, can you guys leave me alone for right now? I'm trying to invent this new thing. So I don't think he was the interview, probably. I love pity live streams. Is this live stream? I should have titled it "Pity the Fool." I pity the fool who doesn't watch this live stream. How much credibility do you think C.S. Joseph has? 0. And what's the giveaway that what you say is more credible than what he says because you disagree on many things? It seems. The simplest giveaway is I can easily win the argument with both hands tied behind my back. He doesn't have TI sound justifications for his things. He can't communicatively defend what he's saying in the way that I can. That's basically the gist of it. I could give you lots of reasons why I can communicatively defend it better, like this element makes more sense, or that element is contradictory, or he's talking in metaphor, or whatever. And he's not making these distinctions, yada, yada, yada. But the bottom line is, it all boils down to, can you win the argument? If you can, you have the preferable approach. If you can't, you don't. Listen, Shreddy Chandran. It's a clever idea, but you can't drink salty tears. Okay? We'd have to build the world's biggest desalination plant first to get the saline out of the liquid that comes from your eyes. I cry a lot though too. And that's the thing is INFPs, you guys probably cry less than me, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I have invited C.S. Joseph to debate me multiple times. RO Overpowered. I said I'd do it on his channel. I said I'd do it on my channel. I said I'd do it in any context. I don't care. He has never responded to me at all beyond one video that he made in response to my first kind of half-assed, just sort of, this guy is not an ENTP. And then after that, he's completely ignored any direct overtures I've made. So if you'd like to see that happen, so would I. But you're going to have to convince somebody who's not an ENTP to debate an actual ENTP about whether or not he's an ENTP. And if he were, he'd be chomping at the bit, but he's not, so he's avoiding it at all costs. ENTPs lead with NE, but when INPs use NE, they become so detached with the external world. So when an NEP use NE, do they not get detached? SE is a function of why NEPs so detached. How ENTPs manage that despite any overload? Oh, because, well, this is the thing. Your dominant function is a function that you understand the full nuances of. So, for example, if you're an FE Dom, you don't just use it to manage perceptions. You understand when not to use it and to use TE instead. And you understand its limits. And you don't use it as a hammer. Tool functions you use as a hammer. So my TI is over applied in the world, to the extent that I have my own cognitive function biases that are impacting my relationships with other people and or that I'm sort of imposing upon them. It's almost always going to be a TI frame that I'm imposing, saying you have to be communicably defensible to be legitimate. Now, that's not actually the case, but because that's my tool function, I operate as though that were the case by default, and I have to remember to metacognate beyond that. It helps a lot having an environment of people who I don't want to feel like I'm negating them. You know, like I don't want viewers to think Eric is negating me because then they don't want to watch me anymore, right? And they don't think I'm a nice person and they don't affirm me and they negate me. So I say, okay, well, I need to find a way that I can be nice to everybody and be cool and do good in the world so I can get affirmed. And the only way I can do that is by metacognating out of my own biases and stuff. But the reality is, regardless of that effort, I will still periodically be like, get your fucking FI logic out of my fucking face, you know? And people will piss me off of being too FI. And the reason is because it's my polar and it runs afoul of my tool function. But it's not the case with extroverted intuition, because with that, I have a more nuanced understanding of it. I understand when not to use it. When I'm typing somebody, I understand that it's not appropriate for me to go, well, you might be a this, you might be a that, you might be a whatever. And that even though I could probably make those arguments, I won't choose to do that. I'll just go with my tool function, the TI, my SI, and NI a lot, you know, which is in the mix for 4, 5. You always have your 4 and 5 both in the mix, although the fifth one is not really conscious, it's very active. FI tool function, ENFPs, ESFPs, there's a spot where, you know, ENTPs and ESTPs are going to have conflicts with those two types. Anytime there's a dispute that comes up, because their modalities of resolving that dispute are both independent of the group and in contradiction to each other most of the time. So, you know, that causes some disputes. But it's like if I'm hanging out with an ENFP or an ESFP and I know this and I keep it in mind and realize that it's futile to go down those paths that I've gone down before, and that it'll just create needless, unresolvable conflict because we're fundamentally operating by a different tool frames, then it makes me hopefully remember to not go there and not end up, you know, pooping all over everybody's party with my TI. Nobody wants to have their party pooped on with someone else's TI. Let's see here. Would INXPs have more of a necessity to have intuitives as peers so they're not forced into being SE? Probably, and they're most likely to consider SE to be forcefulness. That's how I feel about NI tool users. Stop trying that hard; you'll hurt yourself or someone. Right? I feel that way a little bit about NI tool users too. It's like, okay, I get that. Yeah, that is determinant. That is the singular truth and everything. But that's not the story I'm telling, which is one of my favorite new sayings. And when people point out things that like reality is contradicting you here, I just go, yeah, well, that's not the story I'm telling. 6NI, in essence, wants to countervalue any value because they know values are created by mankind that's fallible, and therefore they sit on their skinny fat asses deliberating what is true or not. Well, I'll tell you this about INTPs and their 6-slot NI. It causes them to negate any firm claim that anybody else makes, and that's their way of demonstrating NI. The singular truth here is you can't defend anything really with language. And my disdain for EXFP types is palpable. It is not disdain. I do not have disdain for them. I'm just saying it's implicit that our tool functions will run afoul of each other, and that if there's a dispute, we will want to resolve it in mutually exclusive ways, basically. What type is most likely to get hit by a car due to lack of awareness of surroundings when crossing the street? Probably INTP or INFP, but I'd say INTP. A little more likely to get hit by a car. I think he thinks ENFPs are okay, but he does not seem to enjoy ESFPs. Well, I haven't really met a lot of ESFPs that I've found things in common with or engaged with in ways that were mutually satisfying. Their extroverted intuition is always serving their extroverted sensing. Mine's the other way around, and then we have competing tool functions. It makes it oh, come on, Freddie Chandran, don't say that. Fortunately, if you are SE polar, you'll never get around it. Most car accidents happen in familiar places, guessing that too much SI kills people, not lack of SE. But Senjin, that's a fun one to bring up. The thing is this, I've thought about this statistic before. Most car crashes happen within a mile of your home. There's lots of implications there that you could draw from there. But I think the real factor is most of your driving is done a mile from your home. It's like you always, when you leave the house, cover that area necessarily. And you always, when you come back to the house, cover that area. And then sometimes you leave that area and cover other areas. But because, the closer you get to your house, the greater the frequency with which you'll be in that area when you leave the house. St. John. Hey, you're ignoring any. You are ignoring it, mister. Okay, you just keep on ignoring it. That's not fair. Okay, you're an NI Dom. You're not allowed to use any like that. I don't know if you guys saw, but Sanjay tried to pull my move on me. That's not the story I'm telling you guys. Come on. I actually like STPs, which contradicts the ideas that we're conflicting types. INFP and ESTP, are they conflictors? Oh yeah, they are. Well, I mean, I like ISFPs. I dated an ISFP for a little while, and I just found her amazingly just like, I just wanted to just fucking eat her up, She's like super, super, super sexy. But and it's just something about that personality. It's like it's so fucking they're like animals in a sense, because they probably think, well, I've said it before with ISFPs. Half the time I feel like I'm the only child in the room. Half the time I feel like I'm the only adult in the room. I would not force someone into fun, but it's definitely more enjoyable to have fun. Let's force everyone to have fun, CJ. I want to begin a protocol whereby people come around and at gunpoint, we force them to have fun. You play this fucking games of shoots and ladders right now. Fucking play it. You, get over here. Roll this fucking dice. You're on Candyland. Keep the change, you filthy animal. Well, I'm in a relationship with an ISFJ right now. She's very animalistic in her own ways, too. You know, I guess the conflicted part comes into where we can't connect deeply very easily unless both parties put in a ton of effort, so that we tend to have a more superficial relationship. I think the conflicted part comes with the reality that anytime there's a conflict, it escalates. There's no resolutional path that's available. With ENFP and ENTP, there's a resolutional path that's available, which is through extroverted intuition. With ESFP and ENTP, there's a resolutional path that's available, which is through action deliberation commonality. But there's no commonalities between INFP and ESTP, and so if a conflict erupts, then it will escalate. The thing is, with the way that I was sort of casually dating that ISFP, we didn't really have any conflict. I'd take her out to lunch and buy her a couple margaritas, chat with her about sailing for a little while, and then go home with her. And that, it was a very casual relationship. So, would you like another margarita, honey, sweetheart, darling, little poopsie? You would? I'm so glad. I'm happy to purchase another one for you. No, I don't drink myself, but I love buying you alcohol. How can an SE polar type improve SE usage? That's actually what this was supposed to be about. Before I thought that the other title would be a little bit more NI. Here's the thing about SE polar. What you need to do is essentially allow yourself to get constrained by external discipline. And you need an external discipline factor that is FE heavy, probably if you're INTP, or I guess TE heavy if you're INFP. So an INTP who's in a work environment where they constantly have to be judged and affirmed or negated by somebody. So there's like a supervisor who's constantly checking on their work, right? That because they don't want to embarrass themselves and they want to present the best side of themselves to the other people, that will motivate them to get shit done as appropriate. INFP, on the other hand, needs to be continually told how to do shit. I guess would be the equivalent, So instead of having a supervisor that's constantly checking on you, they're constantly correcting your course a bit and making sure that you're following the protocols and stuff. And in that case, you'd probably be able to fulfill the SE part of things. That's just a notion. It's not the end all. Obviously, there's a lot of things in life that you can't have a boss supervising you or something. I think that's what the dual is for. So ENFJ, one of the things that just occurs to me that ENFJ probably provides for INTP is that frame of when you perform, I affirm. And when you don't, I affirm less, but still encourage. So it's like for INTP, they want that kind of mommy or daddy, the kind that goes, you can do it. You did a great job, right? I want the kind of mommy or daddy who goes, here's some food, go to bed, brush your teeth, take a bath, whatever. And I have that and I'm really satisfied with it. I don't want the kind of mommy who's always doing the FE shit because I'm a big boy now and I can do FE myself, right? Whereas INTP or INFP, it's the opposite. It's like INTP with FE is going to be like, I want that kind of mommy, but I'm a big boy who can do SI myself now. Whereas INFP is going to be like, I want the kind of daddy who's always telling me how to do shit, but I'm a big boy or girl now, and I can do the SI stuff myself. I'm not saying you want or need to be told what to do, Freddie Chandran, as far as INFPs go. I'm saying if you want to get around the SE polar, you'd have to have a work environment which provides that external discipline in a particular way, namely a boss that's continually correcting your course and getting you potentially back on course. That's different than who's continually putting perceptual pressure on you, like giving you easy opportunities to get affirmed by a FE and keeping them, it's like you basically, it's easier for somebody to do SE stuff if the task is shorter. I plan to light this cigarette, and I'm going to follow through on this plan. This is an easy plan to follow through on. There, I'm done. That's easy SE, right? That's base level SE. Anybody can do that kind of SE. Anybody can follow through on that short of a plan. The longer the plan, the bigger the action planned or considered, the more difficult it is to execute from beginning to end. Mindsight 1. I suspect Mindsight 1 is a TI user. Yes, I have no idea how SE polar people have escaped criticism for so long. Any tool is arguably the most useless, and INFPs do love being told how to TE. Yeah. Claims. Yeah, they do not escape criticism. I would say that INTPs are one of the types that is absolutely most susceptible to low self-esteem and generally feeling bad about themselves because of their failure to SE shit. And INFPs are less prone to that because they have a clearer sense of who they are and everything. But yeah, whatever I was saying, I got distracted. Types that escape criticism are TE, SI, and NI polar types. True. SI polar type, well, ENFJs will receive a fair amount of criticism, but it won't because of the SI polar exactly. Well, it kind of will be, but ENTJs are considered, high achievers and generally get respected. TE polar people, INFJs and ISFJs, they've got FE tools, so like Freddie Chandran says, they largely escape criticism for it. And NI polar types, it's hard to notice. It's not clear like what that is exactly to most people. You'll probably go through life if you have an NI polar person and eventually kind of go, hey, this person doesn't really seem to ever be final about things. They're sort of final about their TE, but the frame they have no frame permanence. What do you mean, escape criticism, avoid situations? No, I think they mean just generally, and the world doesn't offer up much criticism to them, is what they mean. It's an idiomatic use of escape there, I think. Just a circle, you don't value FI. You don't value your own feelings. That must be terrible. I can't imagine what that would be like. My moisture is who I am. It makes me authentic. T polar gets criticized a lot, but get away with it regardless. Well, I know that Kimberly's been subjected to a fair amount of like frustration and ontological assault as a consequence of her TE polar. Sometimes I want to be like, Kimberly, what the fuck were you thinking? But I don't say that because she's heard that kind of shit her whole life. And I'm sure it's awful. And she doesn't even really generally, like yesterday when I was being very patient and I got to this arch thing that you wanted me to push into the ground, only to realize that there was a half an hour of work before I could push it into the ground, at least, because I had to go fucking find the right socket wrench and get the fucking wrench thing and go around the whole thing and tighten all the fucking bolts and nuts because she had put it together herself, which is never that never ends well. So I was being all super patient and cool about it and everything. So as a consequence, she started sort of beating herself up about it. You're right. I don't have any idea how long things are going to take. And I'm sorry about this. And I'm like, don't even stress, baby. It's cool. That's the good thing about me countervaluing TE and being FI polar. I really don't give a fuck. You know, it was a little bit annoying that the administrators at my job have auto email that tell me you didn't do that in due time, even when I did. Doesn't it work if you know it's automated? It still works, huh? The FE just assumes it's legit. Anti-polar would make mistakes to get them in jail? I don't think so. ESFJ and ESTJs are not likely to end up in jail. Anti-polar makes mistakes like my dad makes. He has everything insured too much by a large margin. He never uses the insurance. He's had it insured for decades at maximal insurance for everything, right? He never uses it. He doesn't seem to understand this money is going into a hole, right? He assumes it's working because nothing bad's happened. You know, it's like, Dad, over the course of the however many, he's got like, he's driving he's about to go, he's going to go get a new one pretty soon. But he's got currently his old 2006 Mini Cooper that he bought when it was brand new in 2006. Still driving it around, right? He's got that thing full coverage, insured. He has paid, I'm sure, an insurance cost for this car more than the total cost of the car over the course of owning it because he always gets maximum insurance. Well, it's working great. He's never gotten into an accident or anything. He's never gotten the car stolen or damaged or anything like that. So the insurance is working great. No, Dad. That's fucking insane. Another thing about the overuse of tool function, I've noticed ESFJs, from what I've seen, if someone says something negative to them, they'll take it, constantly go back to it, and feel bad. Well, one thing that I also would say is true of anti-polar is they don't necessarily understand well how words persist and link to other words. And this is true also of ISFJ. It's like they don't quite get that they're stuck with their narratives, right? Like, not ISFJs do get that, but it takes them a little while to realize the links. But ESFJs, they never quite get that they're stuck with their narratives. That, like, my ex-wife, my ESFJ ex-wife, she felt like there was a need for her and me to constantly be working on the relationship. And her, what that meant is basically convincing me to be more like her script of how things ought to be in her head, which is based on her own SI impressions of life as an adult that she had when she was a little kid and shit, you know? So how did that play out? It played out with her just like saying, okay, well, Eric, you really need to be, and I say, okay, well, if I change in this way that you want me to change in, and then you say, this is going to make you happy, will it make you happy? Yes, of course. And then I'd change that thing. And then she'd move the goalposts. Okay, now we're going to work on this. So wait, hold on. I thought that was going to make you happy. You're supposed to, I need to get to a point where I've fixed this ongoing complaining of yours, you know, and you are satisfied. Otherwise, it's just an endless cycle of you setting up little things for me to achieve and then rewarding me by praising me and stuff. And I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in having you satisfied and stop fucking with me. So that's ESFJ's polar NI too, is they don't get that things need to be, you know, that at a certain point you stop working on the relationship because it's fixed. Why would ENFJs be subject to criticism though? Their FE makes them almost universally lovable. Well, I think they're subject to criticism because number one, their TI is pretty weak. So the the shit that comes out with their NI tool function is generally pretty banal and not very not particularly insightful. It's just delivered in a particularly palatable way, I guess. But more importantly, ENFJs are the types that are most likely to say, there's one thing everybody needs to do. They need to just let go of the past. They need to let it go. Okay. The past is what holds us back. ENFJ is actual Hitler, right? In other words, they dismiss everybody's individual experience entirely, as do ENTJs, but at least they have this utility frame, which causes them to recognize in a more meaningful way the need for FE and FI considerations to be factored in. Their 8th slot FE makes them somehow better people, than ENFJs, or more respectful of individual experience. ENFJs don't tend to develop their TI a lot. They tend to develop their TE a lot, and they tend to get the two things conflated. So it's like they'll make TE justifications for things rather than TI justifications, and they'll use TE. Their TE 8th slot is there to provide evidence of how smart they are more. So it's a weird. I mean, ENFJs, they can be bright, but look, the bottom line is ENFJ is the person you hire with great enthusiasm and thinking, wow, this person's going to kill it. And you end up having to fire them a couple months later because they're incompetent. And if you get them in the wrong job, right, they'll convince you they're capable of doing just about anything. But if they're in the wrong job, they're going to fail miserably. ESFJs, not so much, because they don't have the kind of overreaching ambition that ENFJs have. ESFJs are household Hitler as opposed to actual Hitler. They might have that same kind of approach and be subject to the same critique, but they take a very different approach with their family than with anybody else because they're SI tool users. Their family's part of them. Unlike ENFJs who are shockingly really detached. Like, I'm FI polar, but I'm very attached to my people, my relationships and shit, and my past and all that kind of stuff. But ENFJs see people as examples of archetypes and as characters. They don't have that past-based attachment that allows them to truly differentiate between the people in their lives. The exception is being if they get with a dual. Getting with a dual, I think, does a world of good for ENFJs. They can get with ISTP. Because ISTP keeps ENFJs constantly on their toes. ISTP is such a dick. And ENFJ doesn't mind that because they're such a dick stroker, and it makes both parties a lot better. So that's what I have to say about ENFJs and stuff. ESFJs can be criticized less because of their SI. Yeah, they do seem to be criticized a lot less, mostly because they're not as ambitious. They're not reaching as high. INTPs will make up a whole scenario in their heads about a social situation, how they'll be received at the party, etc. They'll plan on what to do, but then they're not even going. End up even going right. Whereas if they're with an ESFJ, they won't have to think about all that shit. They'll assume their wife or whomever, their husband, is going to do the interfacing socially for them and make sure that they're presented in a good light and handle the difficulties. And just generally, they'll be in an environment where they're socially successful at home. They get practice. Basically, the ESFJ SFE trains them all the time. Just like my ISFJ SI trains me all the time, and I NE train her all the time. Megan Lavoda seems to be a good example of an ENFJ with Z's and TI. Yeah, I like Megan Lavoda. She's got brows that keep me awake at night. I lie down to go to sleep, and all I do is I just see these two brows in my head. It's Megan's brows. And I say, damn, I didn't know a brow could attain that level of greatness. So, you know, my dream is one day to be a big enough YouTube star that I can live stream an event where I pet Megan's brows. Just one pet for each would be totally satisfying. That's all I need. Just like this. Like that. Why do you think there is such a big difference between your theory on people's duel being a good match and C.S. Joseph's opinion on people's shadow type being the best match? Well, because C.S. Joseph decides on which words he's going to say by digesting his food. And then when it turns into poop, he pulls it out of his ass and says, here. That's why. Because he doesn't justify anything with anything. He doesn't provide actual logical justifications for why his position is this or that. He says, my mentor told me. So that's why. She is nice, though, interacts with her audience. Yeah. If she really wants to convince me she's nice, she's going to let me pet her brows. If INFPs were out and about, though, they'd be subject to a shit ton of criticism. Since they're in their little cave 24/7, they're not, so they make the least amount of damage. Well, INFPs, I really think INFPs are meant to be a fairly pampered family member of a family that loves them a lot and doesn't expect a lot of them. And if they're presented with that situation, if you're kind of the favored daughter of a rich family and you're an INFP and you're empowered to do what you want and paint and explore ideas and whatever, then you're going to be super stoked as long as you don't internalize a bunch of fucking productivity shit that's imposed on you from the outside. And that's the thing. There's nothing inherently good about productivity. It's important to remember that. But the world is very, very certain about the fact that there is something good about productivity inherently. How would any be as a hammer then? Demanding people to be open-minded or dismiss them? Well, what I mean by it's a hammer is that there are certain circumstances in life where you ought not ideate further. You got to pull the trigger. When that girl smiles at you from across the room and makes it clear with her body language she's interested in you, don't use your tool function. Ideate about it. Just get up there and go over and say hi. In that case, you have a hammer, and that's not a nail. But you're going to try to hit it anyway with your hammer. And you go, well, what are the possibilities? If I go over there, then maybe she could say yes, but then maybe she's looking at somebody behind me, or maybe that's the wrong thing to use. Everybody uses their tool function as a hammer, which means they, when there's a problem, they hit it with a hammer. And some problems are suitable for hitting with hammers, and other problems are not suitable for hitting with hammers. Okay, imagine that I would ask this question without referencing C.S. Joseph's statements. Why do you think it's better to seek your dual than your shadow type? Well, I'd have to ask some clarifying questions about shadow type first, because what is your shadow type, and why is it your shadow type? Why is it a good idea to seek your dual? Because I think the fourth cognitive function is seeking, and the dominant is overflowing. So my cup overflows with extroverted intuition. In a context like this, it's perfect. I'm using extroverted intuition in the way it ought to be used. I'm ideating out answers with TI to these various questions that pop up, and the format is perfectly conducive to my cognitive function stack. But that doesn't mean all of life is perfectly conducive to my cognitive function stack. And being a dominant extroverted intuitor means I have a partnership between SI and NE. SI keeps track of my ideas that I've already come up with. NE comes up with new ideas. Problem is, this is way bigger than this. So I'm seeking an environment that makes this stronger without taking away from this too much. In other words, I'm seeking somebody who's overflowing SI so that it'll spill on me. Most people don't want to get SI spilled on them. But if you're an NE Dom, you do. You like SI so much that you don't just not mind getting it spilled on you. You want to get it spilled on you. And similarly for the other way around, the SI dom wants any spilled on her. So the first reason why duality is a good thing is because it's complementary. The excesses of self aren't considered excesses by the other; they're considered advantages. And the area where you most want to give help is where they want to receive help. Now, the other factor is you have the same 2-3, but in reverse order. So I go TIFE, she goes FETI. The reason why that's critical is because you want the any she wants to be providable in the frame that she wants it provided in. So, for example, when Kimberly wants to make an argument in a Facebook thread on the ISFJ Facebook group, and this is a big hand-wringing moment. She will come out here and she will be like, this person upset me on Facebook, and what am I going to do, and what am I going to say, and I'll go, just let me see, baby. Okay, you should just say this. And the reason why that works so well is because I'm working on FETI, which is what she wants to be working in. I'm providing the any, which means she's not going to say something that could easily be turned against her, which is her tendency if she just goes on her own any, which is very limited, right? She doesn't spend a lot of time thinking about all the possibilities of what somebody might say in response to what she says. So she might try to say something to win an argument and end up putting herself in a bad position and get, a trap snapped on her or something. She's confident that I will be able to provide her adequate NE so that she can safely win these arguments, even though it's really my words. It doesn't really matter to her because it's her Facebook identity. So, that's an example of duality working where, because I'm both providing any and making sure it's FE sound, and we're talking the same language about what we're trying to achieve with the language, namely FE and TI. And so it's complementary in that fashion. It's also complementary on the backstack because her polar TE is something I countervalue. I don't like TE anyway. I see TE as what you got to do when you have to stop TIing for some reason. And so it's fine that she's polar TE. And similarly with my FI and her 6-slot FI, she countervalues introverted feelings anyway. So it doesn't really matter that I'm FI polar. So in that regard, it's a good idea for those two types to get together. They're both complementary. It's an easy, natural, comfortable relationship because you speak the same kind of language in reverse needs. Now, as regarding the shadow type, INTJ, well, INTJ would not be a good type for ENTP to be with, if that's what the shadow type is, INTJ. The reason INTJ would not be a good type to be with is because ultimately the deliberation functions are different, the interface functions are different, the knowledge functions are different, and the action functions are different. So it's going to be a big challenge. With their polar, if they embarrass me or something, and I'm going, hey, INTJ partner, please don't say that kind of shit in front of those people. It really embarrasses me. They're not even going to get why that matters. Though. And I say, you shouldn't care about that. That doesn't fucking matter. We care about what we feel, not what other people feel. It's going to be a nightmare, Jason Rodriguez, unless you're talking about their astrological type, that's not very nice and not true at all. Okay? Sarati Chandran is aspirationally ambitious. I want to change the world without using TE or SE. Well, you can change the world just with NE, but it does require a little bit of SE. You got to start the video recorder, talk for a while, stop it, push upload. It requires a little bit of SE. Not that much, really. I say I'm ambitious too. I just need to work towards it, rather than thinking about it all the time. Well, you need the external world to structure things for you such that you're maximally empowered or enabled to convert ideation and moisture into a brick of some sort, something that's permanent, something that can be referenced. Jason Rodriguez, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to put you on timeout. Now you're on timeout. I don't appreciate that kind of stuff. It's just weak as fuck, frankly. It's like, here, let me say this bullshit because that'll be provocative or something. I don't know. I do wonder how tool any manifests, because isn't it sort of inclusive by nature? Well, that's how it manifests. It destabilizes everything. Here's a claim. Yeah, well, but it really depends. And drives people around me crazy. Yeah, I can see how that happens. Ha ha ha. I said it can sting, not always. I think it depends on whether criticism constructive would just mean to bash, how it's worded, etc. Also depends on how honest you are with yourself. So what can sting? Criticism about the SE Polar? Is that what you're talking about, Heather Bryant? Any tool exists to tear shit up. Any tool exists to gum shit up, basically. It's for the INTP, it's to undermine the definitive claims of others, basically. It's what INTP does by instinct. You make a definitive claim, they tell you why that could possibly be wrong. They are nature's negators. INFP, you tell them or ask them a question, they'll tell you all the reasons why it depends. And I mean, INTP will do that too. If you tell them, here's something solid you can rely on, they'll go, it depends, though. It's contextually dependent. Oh, criticism of your inferior function. So you mean criticism of your TE if you're an INFP? I think that probably INFPs are subject to a fairly limited amount of TE criticism, because I would suspect that there's a lot of people in the world who are happy enough to provide TE, like that's a good point, Serenity Gentleman. It really does depend. You're right. Thank you for countervaluing my NI. It was getting in the way there. Go Japan. I like your name, Go. Why do you say Japan? I wonder. Shadow type for INTJs at Zengen. What else? I skipped back up here. Shadow type is basically switching introversion and extroversion orientation of each function. Okay. I'm aspirational at that. INFP are best off more than other types when they can do what they really want. They may relate to the SP types in that sense. Ambitious INFP probably uses SI and TE really well. I would suggest that's the case. Because when you sit on your ass 24/7 and ideate about a bunch of dumb shit, your sex appeal gets reduced to 0. Oh, Freddie Candron. I want you to know that I think you're very, very sexy. Juan Rocha, talk about your boyfriend. Well, my boyfriend, Juan Rocha, is bottoms. He likes to take it in the ass. And I oblige, of course, because he's my boyfriend. And so, he's just like, oh my God, you're tearing my ass up. I love it. He's a founding member of Anal Wreckage Anonymous, actually. Does that answer your question, Juan? Thanks for asking. Appreciate it. Love you too. You and I have a special tenderness between us, Juan Rocha. Yeah, I remember that time we sat around and tickled each other's scrotums. It was a special time. Opposing judging axis equals good for friendship, not for long-term intimate relationship. Opposing judging axis, meaning TEFI or FI. I mean, it can be good for friendship. It can be difficult for friendship too. I've noticed that within the raw room, which is the other part of this community that doesn't necessarily get talked about a lot, but is also critical to the overall community. There's been something of a defection of the FITE people from the TIFE people. And, there's a lot of anti-Susie sentiment for some reason. Like, Susie's the bitch. She's just the admin of the thing. She's not at all a bitch. AJ, I am really curious. I hope you're going to inform us. How big is your dick? Oh, you did inform us. It's huge, you say. Oh, okay, well, great. I'm glad to hear that. Is it bigger than a bread box? Is the TI test taking a pen apart? Oh, the TE test, maybe? Could be. Seems like C.S. Joseph is mixing BB MBTI with Enneagram shadow types. Misconception could be a misinterpretation of the Enneagram. I mean, who knows what C.S. Joseph is justifying shit with? That's the thing. He's not justifying things. He's just making claims, right? Your grandmother's husband's only daughter's husband's what relation to you? That's a TI test, correct? And that would be grandfather, mother, assuming okay, so that would be your father, right? I thought TE would be put the pen together. Yeah, I think TE is put the pen together. You give somebody a taken apart pen with a little spring, kind of go and see if they can put it back together. That's a good test for TE. Well, yeah, Heather Bryant, I tend to agree with you. But, AJ's obviously a provocateur of some sort. He even has the word motherfucker in his name. And he threw out a nigga as well, which means, pretty controversial, pretty provocative guy. I am. No. Like that. That's how I am. No, says Philosophical Thinker. Welcome, Philosophical Thinker. And thank you for resolving that question of yes or no. The answer, it turns out, everybody, was no. We were wondering, we'd been tossing it back and forth, but you got here and you said no, and now we know. How do you come to a conclusion about whether you're INTP or INFP, Heather Bryant? Ask yourself the bully question, Heather Bryant. Your kid comes home. A bully's taking a sandwich. He tried to complain to the teacher, but the teacher was busy and shoot him away, and they never dealt with it, and he never got any justice. What do? When, in your list of things you're thinking about possibly to do you come up with put yourself in the bully's shoes? I love taking multiple cocks in my pose. Oh. Well, Geo Niggy Yugi, I didn't know that about you. That's an interesting thing to be fond of. That should make you popular with the boys. Oh, that wasn't you? Really? Is somebody typing on your computer besides you? Who did that, I wonder? The answer is lawsuit. How did you come to a conclusion on if one is an INTP or a lazy ISTP? Well, INTP and ISTP is very easy to distinguish. I mean, you simply check any tests. You go, I've come up with a new machine. What it does is it gathers pond scum from your pond. It floats around and gathers pond scum, and then it hops out of the pond and it makes the pond scum into a shape of a flower, which then it sits and dries in the sun so that you can have pond scum flowers in your house. Can you help me come up with a name for my new product? And, if you're an ISTP, they won't be able to come up with any good names for it. They just be like, pond scum flower maker. Anything else? Thing that makes flowers from pond scum. So that's the thing. Pure retribution towards the bully. If you want retribution, if you're going to be, well, I'm marching down to that school and I'm raising some hell, or if you're like, I'm going to let's scheme a plan to get back at him, or something like that, then you are definitely not an INFP. What time is it in the USA? It is 6:42 a.m. I got up at like 4 a.m. this morning. The little kitties woke us up, and I just didn't go back to sleep. And how can somebody be confused about their first and fourth functions, but not their second and third? I mean, really, lol. Well, if you're confused about your first and fourth, then you must be confused about your second and third as well, because there's no way you could be like SITI. So you'd have to have the second and third reversed. Some ENTP kid told me that, though, and there's a video somewhere. Well, I'm an INFP, and I still think the bully should face consequences for their actions. Well, I'm not saying would you necessarily not want the bully to face consequences. I'm saying how long would it take you to get to the idea that among the possible considerations is what the bully was feeling? How come an INTP you typed had such a hard time coming up with names for the machine? What ENTP I typed? Which one? I don't know which one you're talking about. I've typed a lot of INTPs. Yeah, I'm not sure. It took me a minute. I had to wait until after Eric figured it out because I couldn't do it while he spoke. I'm dream of Gionigi Yugi. I don't know what is going on with you. Is somebody in the room with you doing that? How else would it be happening? I'm curious about this. I know it's not you. That's very uncharacteristic of you, Gionigi Yugi, to say such things. And it's obviously not. But I'm wondering how it is that they're taking over your thing. Is there somebody in the house with you that's doing that, or are they doing it remotely somehow? I could probably deliberate endlessly. The way other people describe INFPs, I tend to think it's very unlikely. The way Eric describes INFPs, it seems more plausible. I'm going to go for a bit to sort this out. If anyone messages, it's not me. Okay. Any test is the only thing that makes me think I'm an ISTP. Can INTPs really do well on that every time? Well, there's a number of any tests that could be considered additionally. So I would say also ask yourself the question of how many reasons can you come up with? How many reasons can you come up with to invade Canada? How many different ways can you come up with to get something from the bottom of the ocean? If you can easily come up with 5 or 6 of each of those, then it's still an open question. Canada is easy. Okay, but how many different reasons, not just resources, not just different resources you can get, but other reasons besides resources? Have you ever taken up on contacting Dario Nardi? Yeah, I did actually end up Facebook messaging him, and it didn't go well at all. I realized after I did it, I shouldn't have even bothered, because neither of us have the time to. I don't have the time to convince him to take me more seriously than other people. He should, but I don't have the time to convince him of that, and nor the interest, nor, it's like my goals are not ultimately typological. So, well, I like typology, and I think it's a great solution and stuff, for or a great explanation for a lot of things, and a great solution for a lot of things as well. I don't I'm not interested in empirically verifying it or moving science along or something like that. I just don't give a fuck, frankly, about that. Which function in our stack do we hate using the most? Probably 6, I would guess. 7, we don't use it really. We don't even realize we're using it. It is true that for me, when I was forced into a long period of using FI, it was very unpleasant. But I actually find that okay, Geo Negi Yugi's impersonator, I'm putting you on time out. I'm just going to remove that comment. That's all. There. Okay. So, having interacted with an INTP before, I can assure you there is a difference. Ask them to come up with a solution to a problem, and they will give you a complete theory and practical application. Let's see. Is it fair to judge someone for their intellect? Because how much control do we have over our intelligence level anyway, studies mean? No, I don't think it is fair to judge people for their intellect. And I think that it's a mistake to think that that we have a very good understanding of what it means to be smart. It's like there's a lot of different ways of being smart, and they're each independently equally legitimate. I think society affords way too much emphasis on academic success, intelligence, or whatever, general intelligence that can be demonstrated easily enough. I have a huge advantage in being articulate, verbose, talking certain ways, being an extroverted intuitor, and TI. It's an enormous advantage. Much of the time, simply talking fancy sets the frame. Like, it doesn't matter who you're dealing with, really. And knowing that and being able to vary the degree of fanciness I talk with is incredibly powerful. It doesn't even fucking matter what I'm saying, right? And it's a shame, frankly, but I don't really object to it because it helps me. What if you imagine what circumstances led the bully to behave the way he does, but for the purpose of a verbal beatdown that hits all their sore spots? Well, that's a good question. I would guess I would still seem like INFP because it's still focusing on the feelings. It's just being Juan Rocha. I am boring a hole in your anus with my cock, huh? That's true. I am boring you hard. It's my boyfriend, Juan Rocha, who loves anal wreckage. He's here again, and he's just like, oh my God, you're boring the fuck out of me. He doesn't even understand that typically that means he's being bored. He's experiencing boredom, but he's not really good with diction. So believe me, he has no interest in leaving. He is loving it right now. It is going deep. He's like, it's coming out of my mouth. If I want to bore a hole in Juan Rocha, I don't want to. He just keeps insisting. And, I'm so easily turned on. He just has to wink at me once and I'm just like rock hard again. So he hops right on there. Jesus Christ, this guy loves it up the ass. Okay, so Jason Rodriguez, I'm ESTP, bruh. I'm glad you're ESP, bruh. You know what? I'm also going to say this. One, Jason Rodriguez, you have earned the status of Brohan, okay? You have graduated from bruh and bro to Brohan. Congratulations. You think CS Joseph guy is good or bad thing for the type community? Well, he's bad, obviously, because he's spewing bullshit as though it were true without any justifications. Bruh. Used to be INTJ and INFP coffee. They used to be what? Another wrong channel? You're right. CJ O'Connell. If you recognize why female ENTP's denial of her type is objectionable, then you probably won't be polar TI. I guess. I don't know. Yes, I agree that that's some good thinking there, Shreddy Chandran. If you side with female ENTP's arbitrary identification approach to typing, then you're probably TI polar. You're welcome, Jason Rodriguez. CS Joseph just confuses everyone. I agree. I can't type through the chat. Love at CJ O'Donnell. I can't type you through the chat. Why is NE the worst tool function? Well, because it doesn't do anything or decide anything or resolve anything or finalize anything. It just ideates further. Is that Becky? Who is Becky? Where? I want to see Becky. No, Becky is an actual female ENTP. Female ENTP is an ESFP named Brittany. Female ENTP is not an ENTP at all. And she has been told this by everybody for a year, 2 years now or something. It doesn't matter. Date Bayo. Believe it. I will become Hokage. Isn't this a case of the pot calling the kettle black? You know, Shreddy Chandran has a point, Juan Rocha. You're being a little bit boring. And I don't mean in the boring sense that you mean it. I mean, you're causing boredom with your repetition. So what we're looking for here is a little novelty, a little pizzazz, a little zip, a little zazzo from you, okay? So, use your brain and come up with something clever. Go ahead, right now. Oh, Juan Rocha, come on. Female ENTP is an amazing girl with the superpower to turn any question into a TI polar test. I mean, look, I don't have any objection to Brittany or any problem with her or anything. I find it amazing and strange and just like, how can anybody be that persistent over in the face of so much obvious disagreement and reasons to the contrary and yada, yada, yada. Which tasks is any useful for? Well, it's great for ideational tasks. It does its job, and basically it's the Senate of the individual's legislative process. It slows everything down and makes it more difficult for shit to get through. And there needs to be that process because otherwise SE would just sort of win the world, Juan Rocha, you suck what? Well, a number of different things. Would you like a list or what? Again, Juan Rocha, I'm going to have to refer back to Shreddy Chandran's point. You really need to do a better job of being less boring. Say something of some, your NE is, whew, do not go in there. Ian Curtis is cool. Love that song, Atmosphere, and Love Will Tear Us Apart. Very dramatic Enneagram 4 stuff. I don't know what that is. Ian Curtis. I don't know who he is. Thinking functions are responsible for decisions. How is decision making even relevant to any? Thinking functions are not responsible for decisions. That's not true. Decision making is a complex equation. So if I make a decision, I'm referencing my NE, my TI, my SI, my FE, my NI, and maybe TE even, probably not FI. And then I'm SEing to do it, to actually follow through about it. There's never been anybody, I've never gone out with anybody quite as self-absorbed as Juan Rocha. It's like we show up at a party and he's like, everybody, will you please listen? I'm going to ask Eric to talk about me some more. Juan Rocha, I've already talked about you and how you love it taking up the ass and how unbelievably dull you are. So, you can do better than absolutely fucking terrible, right? Try to say something smart or interesting or different or novel or something that makes you look better than profoundly retarded. Because that's where you're at right now. You're got holding up a big sign saying, I want Rocha, and I'm profoundly retarded. What I'm asking you to do is to help you move up to severely retarded. Okay? I'll check a female interview for myself again with the consensus of TWFP and the vibe she seems to give off when I've seen her around. She does not seem mean to me. She's absolutely not. She's got textbook tool function FI. No offense, but I find TI users to be pretty elitist when they judge FI. Not that they don't have a point, but it seems to me that FI is way more likely to see the value of TI than vice versa. I mean, they're both actually, in a way, likely to recognize the value of the other. They're both likely to fight for the other if the other is under attack. So we're more like TE and FE are the enemies of both in some sense, because FI and TI users both say, I need to withdraw and deliberate and come to my own conclusions about this. Whereas FE and TE are going to be interface functions. So they're going to say, the conclusion's outside of me. I just need to find it. It does not serve me well for repetitive tasks and habit forming. Ha Paikom Moexu He Nakamaho. Well, hello to you too, good dog. I'm willing to activate my minimal SE in the situation to make you stop being so mean to host Eric. He's not being mean. He's just being pouty right now. He didn't get his load of man seed this morning, so he's being pouty. I'm also a stickler for sort of believing what people type themselves as. Well, sure, that's FI tool as well. I mean, the thing is, you can't have it both ways. It's either going to be an objective thing that is descriptive of people, or it's going to be an arbitrary thing like race, where you just describe it to yourself for whatever reason you want to. Yeah, it is very ENFP-ish of you. That's absolutely true, because you'd have to have a total intellectual invalid to not see value in TI, to be honest. Eric is not boring. Sometimes I am. Probably not at the moment. Is it me, or most ENTPs are memers? I don't know. Am I a memer? What does it mean to be a memer? I have an old, rotten, moldy, bloody, stained mattress out in the woods behind my trailer home if anyone in the chat wants it. Dibs, dibs, dibs. I want it. Dibs. That's a secret you've discovered about MBTI. Shh. Don't tell anybody, though. It's a secret. There are 16 types. Judging functions are the deciders, and perceiving functions are the way information is processed. That's not really true. Deciding, look, TI determines a status of something. That doesn't necessarily mean you've made a decision. And the status is conditional and temporary. So it's not really a decision-making thing. It's a status-determining thing. Eric, who are the INFP musicians you've typed? I mean, I don't even remember names or anything. I've typed a few INFP musicians. They typically are dissatisfied with their productivity and finishing of things. Um, Old man Bob, get in line. Get in line, mister. Would an ENTP answer immediately and correctly to TI polar test if it's their second function? Pretty much. Yeah, sure. ENTPs tend to get the TI shit right away and like to do it and all that kind of stuff, but not necessarily always. The INTP I typed last night had fairly limited English, and it was a little bit more of a challenge for him to do the TI stuff, even though the TI dumb, because he was translating back and forth from English to Spanish and stuff like that. So I had to account for that a bit, but he was still capable of doing them all. And so there are some factors that come in that may make it a little bit more of a challenge. If assuming their first language is English, though, they should get it right away and have no problems with it. I mean, at worst, TI can just seem redundant to me, but not useless. I mean, TI is redundant to the self if you understand what's important to you and what matters, and get your statuses that way. That's perfectly effective way to go through life, and an important way to go through life. But if you want to make arguments to sustain muster in the general community, then you need to be using TI. That's why C.S. Joseph will never, ever be able to win an argument with me about cognitive functions, because he's TI ignoring. I think INTPs have a love-hate relationship with FI, and hence we use it minimally, but when we do, it's meaningful. I think everybody uses their 8 function in the way it's most optimally used. So ESTPs have the most nuanced and complete understanding of SE, and ENTPs and ENFPs have the most balanced use of SE. I use SE when I need to. I don't when I don't. I don't like it for its own sake, but I do recognize, I use it in a balanced way. That's better, Juan Rocha. That's better. It doesn't make any sense, but it's still better. At least it's critiquing something that's visible for everybody, and it's referencing something, with your whole well, you're super gay, Eric thing. I mean, I might actually be gay. Maybe you probably know whether I am or not. I don't know, but that's not something that's visible anyway. Whereas my nose is very visible, as you can tell. It's quite the available thing to talk about. Now, granted, it's not particularly creative. It's as plain as the nose on my face, you might say. But you have moved up, I would say, from profoundly to severely retarded. So congratulations. INFP is least likely to do get wasted folk girls type of music the majority loves. There is a certain amount of majority loving that, but majority loves shit that pops regardless. If you can get NI clarity enough in your work, then it'll pop. Suppression of your own FI doesn't necessitate a lack of respect or appreciation for others' FI. I think sort of live and let live attitude is compatible with FI 8th. Yeah, and I mean, I think it's compatible with TI 2nd, FI 7th as well. So the fact is, I do respect the individual. I respect other people's feelings. I respect feelings in general. I see them as valid, but not a good way to legitimize things, at least in terms of the general populace or communicative things. For me and Kimberly, in our relationship, it's very important that we both feel things are fair. It's not necessarily going to be the case in a relationship with FI and TE. Fairness is less significant than both people getting what they genuinely need and want. So, it's a different modality, and which is better or worse, it's not a meaningful question, really. Let's see. Aurora is INFP. Who's Aurora? I don't know who Aurora is. I've heard way too many INTPs shitting on FI to believe they have any respect for FI, though. Look, they get more respect for it as they get older. The thing is, what I watched Susie do the other night and working with this ISFP that I was typing was she really was so calming and good and cautious and successful in drawing out the FI of the ISFP in a way that she was hoping was going to help her to come to terms with the reality of it. But I was very impressed with the way that Susie displayed competency with FI, despite it being a slot, and it drove home the way that INTPs have a much more balanced and nuanced understanding of FI than ENTPs do. Freddie Channon says, Eric, I do believe you're an ENTP, but your FI seems unusually strong for an ENTP. The thing is, I mean, it depends what you mean by FI. I have a comfortable relationship with my polar in the sense that like yesterday, I was feeling depressed. I think it was yesterday, maybe the day before. I was feeling depressed, quote unquote, whatever that means. I'm not really sure what that even means. But I was feeling like, everything's meh. I'm not very enthusiastic or whatever. And I talked with my therapist, Becky, and she sort of walked me through this process of recognizing that a lot of what was bringing me down maybe was some of the emotional weight that has to do with my parents. And my mom has dementia. My mom's basically gone, and Kimberly was kind of giving me that message in the car, saying, your mom's gone, and you need to understand that and accept that, and yada yada yada. So the thing is, processing. Oh, it was 2 days ago that this happened, because it was yesterday morning. I woke up and I felt really good. And I felt really good because I had done some emotional processing. And what Becky told me as a sort of takeaway, which I think is good advice, was, spend time actively feeling sad and dealing with that and reflecting on the significance of it. And then after you do so, then the rest of your time, you'll be less encumbered by it. And it absolutely is true. It's important for me to cry sometimes and spend some time just sitting in the moisture, just dampening. And then when I do, I get unburdened. I've noticed when I do have genuine emotional experiences like that, I immediately start yawning afterwards. After I cry, I feel kind of like refreshed or something, and then I get really sleepy and I need to go lie down. But it's an important part of adulthood. It's like when I was younger, it was fine for me to be a little bit more ontologically assaulting, to dismiss the differences of others, to dismiss the subjectivity of others, and to insist that I used to want to have a bumper sticker that said, belief is Satan's favorite tool or something. I used to want to have a general position of, whenever you have a problem and you're upset about something or whatever, the problem is very simple. You need more objective self-criticism. You're not being objective in your self-criticism. You're not acknowledging yourself where you're responsible and take ownership of shit and handle it. It used to be all like that, But maturity means evolving beyond that. And if I wanted to become a more optimal human being, I needed to stop reflexively attaching to my attentional habits and start metacogniting into somebody who's a little bit more realized. My mom, I've been dealing with my mom now for quite a while, and it's not like anything new. It's just that that's part of being FI polar, is not realizing that this is weighing down on you a lot. Not realizing that you can't just go when I go to my parents and my dad starts talking to me about all his, there's always another, this friend's in the hospital, this friend's dying, this friend's whatever. And it's, it's, um, it's heavy, but I walk away from there. I am burdened by the weight of that, but I'm not attending to that consciously at all, or even really unconsciously very much. And yet it's still there and it's causing some sort of drag upon the self. I need to process it in order to allow myself to be free of that drag. Sardi Chandran says, well, Eric, I actually find ESFPs and ENFPs to be very self-critical. How would you address that? Well, the question is, are they very self-critical or are they objectively self-critical? And there's a big difference, right? Objectively self-critical means acknowledging when you do things well. Also, criticism is not necessarily negation. So being objectively self-critical says, here's where I fucked up and took ownership, and here's where I'm absolutely right and you're wrong. And I'm being objective about it because I'm accurately determining the thing based on fairness and yada, yada, yada. So let's see. They were on the same label as Neutral Milk. The earlier stuff is more folk, like Neutral Milk. The new stuff is just batshit insane and randomness and freakouts. That sounds like a devolution then. Belief is Satan's favorite tool. Belief is a generalized view or idea toward a value to which emotion, such as anger, is a manifestation of emotion, be the how evaluation. That's an interesting notion. I would say belief is affirmation of a position as attached to the self. It would be the most operationalized definition. You could use it to actually define things as this or that, because it links to a specific kind of verbalized behavior. Florence Welch. Florence Welch? I don't know who Florence Welch. Yeah, INFP here. I agree with you or Becky, sitting in the emotion. It can be a beautiful thing when you get out that moisture. I reckon everyone sparks it. I agree with you. It's extremely cleansing feeling. It's like you feel like the world does after a heavy rain, like everything's clean. Isn't the lead for Nirvana INFP Kurt Cobain? I actually think Kurt Cobain was an INFJ. C.S. Joseph typed Keanu as INFP. I have no idea what Keanu Reeves is. Eric, how has Becky been able to help you with your FI if she's FI polar herself, though? Well, because she's not coming at the whole question of therapy with the idea that she knows the answers. She's asking me questions and walking me through and coming to the answers myself, basically. And that's because she's an excellent therapist. And, the thing is, she, as an FI polar person herself, who's gone through a lot of therapy and shit and had a much more bumpy road to adulthood than I did, probably, or at least, she seems like the same age as me. Like she at 26 or whatever she is, she's where I am at 48, basically. So, well, of course you see a lot of FI and Cobain, Eurolam. After all, those songs needed to be universally resonant and really pop on all the coolness metrics too, That's demonstrative FI, in my opinion. Panda Bear of Animal Collective is likely INFP, whereas at AVTER is likely ENFP. I don't know what those things are. Neo is apparently INTP. Do you take into account Enneagrams? I think Enneagram is not shit. I think it's a way to explain differences within a type to a certain extent. But I think it's not implicit to a person in the way that functions are. I think it changes over time. It's a descriptive thing. So, like, it's true that descriptively I'm more or less a 7. I'm more or less avoidant of things that seem heavy or weighty or difficult or whatever. And that would make me different than an ENTP who's a different Enneagram type. Like I would think that Jules' boyfriend, Aaron, he's an ENTP who I think is a 2 maybe. And he's in a lot of ways different than me, but still definitely an ENTP. And so that kind of explains the difference. But the Enneagram is cool because it addresses something that cognitive functions don't, namely the whole idea of there being 3 core negative emotions: anger, shame, and fear feel intuitively right to me. And the idea that we have defenses against those that take these forms, that feels intuitively right to me. So yeah, it's weird. ENTP too. He's very helpful. He came over here and he got my computer and my setup all fixed up and shit. Smart guy, he works for the police department in Arizona somewhere. He's their IT guy. Father John Misty, don't know who that is. Bradford Cox of Deer Hunter, don't know who that is. Enneagram 7 for the win, yeah. I got a cool freestyle from a long time ago, but when I thought, it's kind of dorky actually, the lyrics of it, but whatever. Eric, what do you think about Enneagram 6? I think Kimberly's a 6, and what I think about it is it matches well with 7. It's very nesty, 6 matches well with SI, and it matches well with, as a partner with a 7 with NE. It's a good matchup. But Kimberly, for example, is 648 maybe, or 684, which is a difficult tri-type. She's a nester who's a fighter and an individualistic fighter as well. And let's not play name people Eric doesn't know anything about, right? That's fine. A lot of people in the world, I only know about some of them. Wouldn't it be unlikely for an INFP to be endlessly irritated by TE and others if they are seeking TE, or is that attitude compatible with inferior TE? I suspect the INFP who thinks they're being irritated by TE is actually being irritated by SE, but their SE polar makes it difficult for them to distinguish between the two. No, I'm sure that even some FJ types like to see vulnerability and dampness. I do. I really want vulnerability in my close relationships from the other person. It makes me feel safe, like, okay, they feel safe with me, so I am responsible for protecting their yeah, hard to tell with FJM, and I'm also not super versed in his personality. FI is universal in the sense that they're good at zoning in on something that's universally emotionally moving. I mean, I like to think of there being 2 kinds of emotions: ones that are about what you're feeling, and ones that are communicative emotions. Anger is typically communicative. Laughter is communicative. Whereas sadness is not intended to communicate, although you might display it. This chat is so NE. We started at Polar SE and we're talking about Enneagram. I love it. It is very it is very NE, and this is definitely an environment which I think INTPs and INFPs feel comfortable, just as I do feel comfortable, because of the combination of deliberation and action. I have watched Rick and Morty. I watched the first couple of seasons, and I got to the end of where it was, and I stopped, and I haven't resumed it since. But I think Rick is a good representation of an HP. Yeah, pretty good. I mean, the difference being his TE is way too good for an HP, right? He's always successfully solving shit. But the whole needing to get drunk all the time to quiet his overactive mind and his obvious FI polar and his his enthusiasm for drugs and freaky sex shit, and it's all textbook ENTP stuff. It's just, of course, because he's a TV character, he's got way more capacity to affect change than an ENTP really does, or to solve problems or, accomplish sciencey stuff. My ENTP X pretended to be empathetic, but then proceeded to use that shit against me during disputes. There's a thing about attachment style and relationship style that's relevant too. So I was raised in a family where I have a very secure attachment style. I was very well loved, and everybody in the family was very kind to each other all the time and respectful to each other. And so I enter my relationship with Kimberly assuming that these sort of inherent good frames that I learned in my childhood will apply in this relationship as well. Did not come from a comparable relationship, and we've had to hammer all that shit out. And Becky's been hugely, dramatically impactful in that. Like, Kimberly was already going to the therapist. It wasn't working at all and was making shit worse. And we talked to a couple other people before and made shit worse. And fucking Becky came in and saved the fucking day. So thank you, Freddie Chandran. I appreciate that. What is INTP perverts? I don't know. I guess they're like hentai. I love being around NPs. The conversation never ends. It's true. Animal Collective seem like more of an NI band compared to the other bands we're talking about. It seems weird at first, but I think it's all planned. Even if it is online. NI. She typed Ben Shapiro as ENTJ. Lol. Ben Shapiro might be an ENTJ. I am split between ENTJ and ENTP for Ben Shapiro. I think he's a trained debater who's an ENTJ. An ENTJ trained debater will debate like Ben Shapiro a lot of times. So supposedly, my chart type is 592. Which type would you think that would be more consistent with? It's consistent with either INFP or INTP. I guess more consistent with INFP because the five is a deliberation function. It's not. People think, well, 5 is thinking, therefore it's TI. No, it's just deliberation. Gotta hate Ben Shapiro's voice. He sounds like a little kid, and he actually looks like a little boy still. Well, that's not really a good reason to dislike the guy, but that's fine. I just don't like Ellen and don't want her to be representative of my type. You don't like Ellen DeGeneres? What type is she? Ben Shapiro is ESTJ proof. I want to slap him on the side. He might be an ESTJ. I hadn't considered that possibility. He could be an ESTJ trained debater. Trained debaters, it makes things a lot harder to tell. You get his my former assistant coach, who is now one of the most effective coaches in the country for sure, got somebody. He won national championship in policy debate 2 years in a row at high school level. And anyways, his name is Scott Wheeler, my former assistant coach. And he was an ESTJ. He actually taught me a lot about how to coach debate. Even though he was my assistant coach, I learned way more from him than he did from me. I mean, I'm a better debater than Ben Shapiro, for sure. But when I say that out loud, people go, oh my God, you're so full of yourself. Oh, yeah, Ben Shapiro is the best debater ever. He's not the best debater ever. But he and I probably wouldn't find a lot of points to clash on. His arguments are mostly TI sound, even though there's a lot of FE rooting, TE rooting in them. So he'd avoid making claims that would be easily disputed. But if we could find an area where we're actually in disagreement, because he'd try to parse it down to something so specific that it's hard to disagree with it. And that's a good enough technique, Calypso types people using micro expressions. Well, it's an okay way to type people if you use that successfully, and and it gives you good information, fine. But it's not, the reason why it's not a good way to formally type people is because if you can't explain it to anybody else, right? You can't say, oh, this is why I'm this type. It's because of my micro expressions. Oh, well, can I double check that? Can I ask those questions too? No, you have to just know. Oh, well, then that's not very useful. Yeah, you probably are, Eric. You know why? Because you actually engage with people's points and not steamroll over them with stupid shit. Right, I do try to engage with their points. You know, the thing about the band is it's all synthesized down into one thing, which seems very NI to me. It's the image, music, etc. It's all one thing. I'm literally just casually throwing out thoughts on types, though I haven't done research extensively. Ben Shapiro has very harmful views against women and transgenders. Really? What's his harmful views against women and transgenders? Is he? I mean, I don't know. I'm not really very familiar with the guy or anything. I don't watch his videos. Or I remember watching one of his little like podcasty news broadcast things one time and just being like, fucking, this is garbage fucking team shit. It's the same fucking team shit, you know, like it's us good guy conservatives versus those bad guy liberals. And it's like, you're just part of the fucking problem. Yeah, I can feel that because it does seem like they have a sort of grand vision at times. They are consistent in a way, especially with smiles. I find typing by a micro expression is not accurate when you look at a large scale of people. He doesn't have harmful views. Sreddy is just a goof. Maybe it's the way he gets his points across. I mean, look, the thing is, there's a need in political discourse in general to account for things that don't validate on your own metric. So I consider myself a feminist simply because I consider myself an egalitarian. Everybody needs to have equal protection under the law and be fundamentally equal in their ontology. Now, he said something about how transgender is a mental disease. I was instantly disgusted. Well, the thing is, I find it difficult to embrace the idea that elective surgery to change who you are, your physical body, to match up with your perceptual sense of self is ill-advised. I think that's true whether you're getting a boob job or getting your junk cut off or whatever. But I wouldn't go as far as to call it necessarily a mental disease. I think that people are best served at optimizing the self they are and have rather than trying to become a self they envision. I usually can't watch a full video of Shapiro, which is usually a sign of someone who has unipolar and is listening to the sound of his own voice. Hey, thanks, Retro Gamer 71. I got 10 L's. 10 crossed L's. That's fantastic. I love those things. For my gay nose. Thanks. So am I gonna so that $10 is supposed to go to a nose job or what? Is that what that's for specifically? Just so I know to afford it appropriate, directed to the appropriate purpose. What I'm going to do now for you, Retro Gamer 71, is I'm going to transubstantiate a bong rip. What I need to know is, would you prefer the purple scissor or would you prefer the devil's lettuce? I'll go to metaphysical nose sexuality restoration therapy, where they'll tell my nose, you know what? I'll go to nasal Schick-Shadel for gayness. Now, if you know that what the Schick-Shadel Center does, the Schick-Shadel Center used to cure people of smoking cigarettes, for example. But the way they did it is they made you sit there and smoke like 2 cartons of cigarettes, all in one sitting, and then you never wanted to smoke again. puke your guts out. Well, I want to send my nose to shadal heterosexual therapy. Basically, it has so much gay sex that it gets sick of it and never wants to have it again. Eric, you're clearly better at analyzing his claims disinterestedly than I am, because I instantly feel the urge to scream, "Why are you such a douche?" This just exemplifies FIL. It has something to do with his FE as well. It's not just your own FI. His FE it's pretty smug. I can be smug too. And I can be dickish in my arguing, but he's not. He's got so much affirmation from so many people, and there's so many reasons to conclude that he's doing it right. He's winning a lot of arguments that he doesn't. I mean, he needs to debate me or somebody like me who makes him go, "Oh, okay, this person's actually trying to engage about the things, and I'm looking bad as a consequence, and this isn't working." He keeps bringing up killing babies whenever they talk about the anti-abortion bill passing in Georgia. I mean, that's playing to the base, I guess. But the thing is, it's a more nuanced question than that. I'm pro-life myself, but there's a need for acknowledging the legitimate aspects of the opposition's side, so that people understand that the discourse here is intended to be purposeful rather than divisive. Well, thanks, Freddie Chandran. I'm more palatable in this context for sure, where I'm, and this is one of the great things about having INFPs around and FI users in general, is in an environment where it's just all alpha quadra all the time, it's just reinforcing my own perspectives and my own biases. And so I'm not able to grow in that environment. Any tips for FE polars? I would say number one, remember that you're lucky. You've got a whole fucking raft full of weird data that you get to not pay any attention to. It's like, in a way, it's the luckiest one. You don't give a fuck what people think. And that's a value that at the end of the day, everybody deep down sort of thinks we ought to uphold. The thing is, if you find it encumbering you in some ways, then introduce people who are having a problem with it to the reality of polars. Why is any the worst tool function? Renlin, I will tell you. Because it's not a tool function that does anything or decides anything or concludes anything or resolves anything or determines things. It is a tool function that disrupts, gums up the processes of other people's ideations, puts a halt towards action, and says, let's deliberate and ideate further. This can be a good thing, good for society, but it doesn't tend to correlate with efficacy on the part of the individual who's wielding any as a tool function. Where's my light bulb? Saying NE is the worst tool function is like saying SE is the worst tool function. Yeah, well, I was gonna put my original title was going to be something along the lines of, the topic was going to be tips for SE polar types or something, like how you can work around SE polar. But then I figured that any tool is the worst tool function, which is kind of what I was thinking when I finished typing this INTP last night, would be a better title. It would get more people to show up, maybe. But without the NE ideas, how can anything be decided on? Well, it's true that NE provides the decider, whether it's the self or somebody else, with potential things to decide between. But if coming to a decision only generates more potential ideas about how that decision could have been wrong, or how the conclusion one has reached might not be reliable, or whatever else, then, or how it might not be in touch with your feelings over the long term, then it tends to drag any tool user into a quagmire of inaction. How can you tell the difference between INTPs and ENTPs if their top two functions are just the same in a different order? They're difficult to tell the difference between, actually, to be honest. It's one of the more difficult typing challenges I face is when I have an INTP eliminating for sure ENTP. The way I do it is I basically describe FI polar and SE polar, or ask questions for FI polar and SE polar, and generally INTPs will confirm their INTPs by making clear that they don't understand SE and that they're SE polar. The other thing is, it's the way that INTPs are, they don't affirm firm claims, and they negate firm claims. They do it instinctually, reflexively, all the time. It's how they demonstrate NI. Their demonstrative NI is nothing. You can't defend anything, really. Not any firm statement. That's their NI. And it's demonstrating by collapsing down everybody's shit into a mush of relativism. But when you try to NI at them, they resist it wholeheartedly. Yeah, but there could be this other thing, and yeah, but there could be this other thing. So, whereas ENTPs, if you say, okay, here's a good way to distinguish between ENTP and INTP. It's the chicken or rooster question. This is a true story. There was a chicken in England that was a hen, but one of its ovaries got damaged, and because there were no roosters in this flock, it became a rooster. It grew different kind of feathers to look like a rooster, got a little bit bigger, started crowing in the morning. It would fight off predators, and the hens would treat it like a rooster, and it would go rah, and they would go run and hide while it protected them from hawks and shit like that. And the question is that actually a chicken or a rooster? Now, an ENTP will stake a position out on it and be ready to argue it. It's a rooster. It's a chicken, whatever the position is. They're going to take a position on it because that's using TI as a tool function. When asked questions like that, you take a position on this. You take a position and you argue it. ENTPs sometimes will challenge the question or whatever, but in general, ESTPs and ENTPs will take a position on it, answer the question. INTPs will go, it depends, or they'll say, well, it's both, or it's neither, or it's a chicken biologically, but it's a rooster ontologically, or some other fucking half-assed answer like that, right? Because they're not interested in parsing. They understand, they have a more nuanced understanding of TI. They go, this isn't really suitable for TI parsing, this question, in the way that you've set it up. Whereas TI tool function is a hammer. It thinks everything's a nail. So there you go. So that's a good way to distinguish between ENTP and INTP. Who's Hyde? I mean, I'm interested in what they do, but damn, their political sphere is toxic as fuck. Who's they? I've grown out of their nihilism, or whatever it is you want to call it. I don't know who you're talking about. Sturdy Chandler, of course, you make a judgment on one's FI, but then want further information to solidify your claims. My bad. I should have been more clear, but I wonder if you agree that Sam Hyde is an unhealthy ENTP. Oh, Sam Hyde. I don't remember I don't remember exactly what it was he did or something. I think I will eventually look into him more to see if I can validate my own judgment about his dickishness. Ask the chicken. Ask the chicken's a good answer, God slave. So today I learned my tool function is the worst one. Yep. Sorry about that. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. I'm just the messenger. I mean, I'm interested in what they do. Could a depressed ENTP appear like an INTP? Well, for a brief time, this guy I talked last night, I said, I think he might be a depressed ENTP. He indicated that he was kind of feeling down. But the answer is no, really, because a depressed ENTP won't report that they are depressed because they're not doing stuff. They'll report that they're not doing stuff because they're depressed. Whereas INTPs are depressed because they're not doing stuff. If when I was feeling kind of depressed about myself, first of all, I had a hard time figuring out what was going on, or if I was sad, or if there was, even whatever. And it took me a couple days to go, I think I'm feeling kind of like depressed or something. And then it took talking to my therapist to figure out that I was sad because my mom's so far along in dementia that she's more or less gone completely. Like there's no having any regular conversations with her. And that my dad is very old and being unipolar, dumb about things in certain ways, and I have a lot of responsibility to make sure that, it's complicated. But anyway, it's weight. And I didn't really recognize that was happening. Whereas an INTP is more likely to be weighed down foremost by self-perception stuff, like not perceiving themselves as pulling their shit like they should be. Okay, so yeah, okay. Freddie Chandler, I want to stress, when I say any is the worst tool function, I mean for you guys, not for me. Look, I like any tool function people a lot, obviously. I like INFPs and INTPs. INFPs are a little scary, but I respect them. I like them, and they provide me a lot of insight. And like I get to see in the INFP how FI and TI can work together, whereas I don't get to see that in ISFP because their SE tool function means they're not using those two deliberation functions in a frame that I can take from, basically. Right, you do. No, you guys are great. Worst is well, I'm gonna go a little bit INFP here. It's not so much that any is the worst tool function as it is that it all depends. It really all depends. Let's see. SpongeBob is an ESFJ, I think. That's a good question. What is SpongeBob? I think SpongeBob might be an ESFP, a very happy ESFP. It took me 2 years to realize I was depressed. Okay, I mean, the thing is, there are depressed ENTPs too. Becky used to be depressed. She got some sort of medication on it, and she had a hard time figuring it out too. For me, depression was the wrong word, really. I'm feeling weighed down by the emotional realities that I, by nature, don't process. So I have to pay attention to those actively. I know you're kidding, Eric. It's fun to mess with you by bragging about how awesome any tool users are. Then you're playing around with my third slot FE, which is a little bit skittish, So if I start getting a little bit of like FE critique coming at me, I'm going, okay, all right, let me do a little dancing here. It's gonna be okay, everybody. He's absolutely an 8-wing 7, and I was debating ENTP and ENTJ, but ENTJ is probably more accurate. He seems pretty fixed and personal in his views. I'm late here. Can you summarize why Annie is the worst tool? I just did that, didn't I? CJ O'Connell, I was off of him when he said he didn't care that woman got killed at the Charlottesville riot or whatever. How is that humor? It's not very good humor. So that's a good idea, Sunjan. How much bang do you get for your buck when you have 5,000 plus videos? Is it accumulating or something profitable? Not really. The revenue from the channel, if I were to take away super chats, it would probably be about $100 a month. And as it currently is with super chats, mostly from Amber Drasher, for the last few months, it's been like $400 or $500 a month of revenue from the channel. The thing is, most of the videos get basically no revenue. There are only some videos that you have that have legs. They continue to get views and continue to be promoted by YouTube. And it's only the best of them as they determine it. So for me, you could do the same thing I've done with 1,000 videos or fewer even if you were adequately NI about the videos. So, let's see. Like, holy shit, man, when he tweeted that I was unironically pissed. Who tweeted that? I don't know. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Unprocessed emotional realities. A few salty people have already downvoted the video. Which video? This video? That happens to every video of mine. There's some people out there who just downvote shit immediately right away. I don't know why. It doesn't matter to me. I found that with my FI2, it took me making an effort to not distract myself to realize what the problem was. Apathy is a more accurate way to describe actual depression. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I know that when I'm in a bad place, I'm not feeling enthusiastic about things. I'm feeling fairly apathetic. Hey, Eric, how would you test Enneagram? I wouldn't. I'm not an expert on Enneagram. I'm not interested in really. I mean, I offer my Enneagram tri-type test, which is just basically I ask them, how do you deal with shame? Do you do you think you're more likely to try to help or to achieve on normal metrics or be an individual? I ask them, how do you deal with fear? Are you more likely to try to understand it completely? Are you more likely to build your nest up, or are you just going to stick your head in the sand and ignore it? How do you deal with anger? Are you more likely to come back with the pow pows? Are you going to be, hey, it's okay, let me make peace? Or are you going to be like, well, here's a resolution. If you don't like it, I'm going to walk away. And then they tell me the answers to each of those. And the one that's easiest for them to answer, I figure is their first one. And then I try to determine which one they find easier to answer between the second and third. And then I tell them that's their tri-type. But I also tell them I'm no expert on Enneagram, and it's cool. I like it, but I'm not interested in learning more about it really because it seems non-mechanical to me. Too much feelings that cannot be recognized and be dealt with, so the mind sort of short circuits and goes numb. What would Squidward be? Squidward is I think he's an ISTP, maybe. Even if you can't type fictional characters, showing how and why you can't type them is good pedagogy. That's true. Pedagogy. How do you say that word anywhere? I've used this word many times. I've read it many times. I always forget to
pedagogy.
How to say it. Amber loves throwing down the dough. She rolls in with thunder. Yeah, I tell you. I mean, I appreciate it. I think it was shocking. I mean, it was absolutely shocking the first time, and then it kept happening. It was still shocking, and it's like, wow. Do you think it's possible for both you and Day Superpowers to be correct if you were coming at MBTI from different angles? Well, the only way he could be correct would, number one, be to acknowledge that he's making arbitrary definitions of things that don't establish the distinctions they need to establish to be meaningful definitions. And as a consequence, he's creating his own language and metaphor, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but there's nothing worthwhile about what he's presenting in that regard either. So if he wants to make that statement, then he and I would be in full agreement. We'd just be coming at it from different angles. His completely arbitrary and metaphorical, and mine actually caring about the truth. So there you go. What type most likely to lock themselves up in a room and sit on the computer all day, has irregular sleep schedule, messages, forgets to eat, drink, INTP or ENTP? Look at the Enneagram type that makes you cringe and hate. Could be INTJ, I guess. They might do that too. But they probably have better SI than that. Look at the Enneagram type that makes you cringe and hate. That could be a good starting point. The Enneagram type that makes you cringe is the one you are, you think? The dude clearly has issues in the appeal of a train wreck. I'm emotionally flat, but not sad. I think it's just low dopamine, but not depression as such. Nothing MAOIs can't fix. Sam Hyde's Charlottesville humor tweet. I didn't see or hear of it or anything. Fukoki was very upset when someone downvoted her video. Really? I mean, shit just happens. You get it. Anytime you have any success in life, you can get some haters. Apathy, depression, do they both answer to unprocessed emotional realities? That's a good question, Archer Gamer. I don't have the answer to that. I'll ask Becky. I'll get back to you. See what she has to say. She and I could discuss it and probably get to the bottom of that question. We might need to get an FI person in the mix. I don't know. And anyone can get so specific, it's hard to find a lot of good information on it. It gets so specific because it's basically arbitrary in the sense that it's not a mechanics that you can reliably model, for example. It's instead a shifting set of relationships with the respective in universal pressure points in life of fear, anger, and shame. Depression seems to be common among MP types. Yeah, I think I genuinely was actually depressed in college. I really do, but I didn't know it at the time. And I think since then, basically, I've been not depressed. So I don't know why he would say something like that. I don't think that's funny or shocking. I think that it's bad FE mostly. I mean, the thing is, it's probably true. Like, I don't care about the person who got killed at Mia because I don't know them and I'm unattached to that reality. But to make that as a point of some sort is to say we ought not consider or worry about whether that death, where it came from, or that the injustice implicit in it. So I do very much care about justice and injustice. It may not translate into personally caring about that individual person or putting myself in her shoes or her family's shoes. I'm not typically going to do that. But I am FE aware enough that I understand that to make that explicit for some reason, and especially in a way that is using sort of dismissive language or derogatory language, is there's no good to come out of it, no matter what, you know. And you're not even challenging any sort of meaningful social moray that you might be able to challenge. You know, well, I'm going to resist your attempt to censor my language by saying this kind of thing. It's not even relevant there. It's just like just general nastiness, you know? I think depression, apathy, etc., could be a bit to do with leaving a question unanswered, attachment because your reality doesn't match your expectations. Well, I mean, the thing is, pedagogy. Thank you, Lightbulb. Reality not matching expectations is, as I understand it, the prime directive for human experience, which is it's what drives us above all else is the desire to have reality match expectations. A lot of the times, maybe generally, the thing that needs to change is our expectations, not reality. So when Sriti Chandran asks, is SE the key to happiness? No. And probably the biggest challenge that each of us faces is that we enter into adulthood endowed with a set of narratives that relate to our implicit value matrix in ways that are either complementary or contraindicative. And to the extent that they're contraindicative, it creates ontological dissonance. Like, I'm supposed to be like this, but I'm really like this. And then people have to deal with that in one way or another. Usually it's the I'm supposed to be like this part that needs to change, not the I'm like this part. But sometimes it can be the other way too. So, you know, Eric, does third slot FE act as a perception management tool, or is FE like that in general? FE is a perception awareness tool. It is, and management. It keeps track of what other people think and how other people are interacting with other people. So somebody with FE higher than me will not just be aware of how Bob's behavior to me impacted me and Bob's perceptions. An FE tool or higher user will also be aware of how that interaction between Bob and me affected Steve's perceptions over there who was watching, and how even perhaps Steve's communication with Mary later will impact those perceptions and shit like that. So the higher up in the stack it is, the more nuanced its understanding of FE interactivity between people. I just want to tell you I really love your videos and appreciate your contributions to the typing community. Well, thank you, Cass Marshall. That's very kind of you. I appreciate it. It's nice of you to say. It's like shit like that helps resolve my ontological dissonance. Because I mean, I still have some myself. You know, I'm not as productive or financially producing as I used to make a lot more money when I was like a full-time, when I was director of a big debate program, and it was a private debate program and stuff, you know. And I have a general sense that my dad is disappointed that I'm prioritizing things that he thinks are not important over making more money. And that's one of those things where I have to go, okay, well, this is something that I can't internalize. It's not that he's not right here. I've done that. I've been there. I've done those 60-hour weeks. I get the value of them. And I know that my dad thinks I should prioritize putting away for retirement and a bunch of other, you know, thinks I should have bought a house by now. He thinks I waste my money or whatever. But I get that I've got different priorities than that, and that it's okay that he's not right about me and what I ought to be doing, where he disagrees with me and that issue. And that seems like a simple enough thing. Other people are not right about you and what you should be doing when they disagree with you, and you're certain that you're right about it. Now, that doesn't mean that other people are not right about a given status of something, that's a different question. My dad is an ESTJ, yes. He's an ESTJ who loves me very much and who nevertheless has lots of strong TE opinions about how other people should do things. So let's see here. Model G. You should check out the basic Model G framework. It really helped me mash together a lot of ideas about functions. Like, that's just unfair, low blow kind of shit that doesn't hold up to scrutiny, names to shock while seeming to espouse genuine shitty views, no irony whatsoever. It's just, it's a failure on all intuitive and otherwise levels. FE seems like a complex web of social relations as emotions, perceptions, brain food circuits. It's basically other people's metaphysical plate. So if you think about the world as having a field and a plate, the field is external and the plate is internal. Okay, so you've got a metaphysical field and a metaphysical plate. You've got a physical field and a physical plate. Physical plate's your body. The physical field is shit outside of you. The metaphysical field is like this. We're playing on the metaphysical field right now. All the ideation is being put out externally where other people can process the information. And you guys are typing things here that I read out loud and make them, to further externalize it even, to make it more on the external metaphysical field. But we each also have our own metaphysical plate, which is to say, inside we've got our conception of this, of how this metaphysical external field shit impacts ourself and other things. The thing is, FE is about keeping track of other people's metaphysical plates. TI, FI and SI are about keeping track of your own physical plate. TI and NI are about keeping track of your own metaphysical plate. And TE and SE are about doing shit out on the physical field. And any and FE are doing shit out on the metaphysical field. No, I mean, yeah, and FE is mostly about keeping track of other people's metaphysical planes or plates, right? And so when you're FEing, you're doing stuff on the metaphysical field, knowing how it's going to impact their metaphysical plates. So FE and NE do shit on the metaphysical field, but FE is specifically attending to how that's going to impact other people's plates. And NE is more concerned about how shit works out on the field itself. It's less concerned about your plate, but NE sees the totality of stuff as ending with that which is out on the field, or can be inferred logically in some sense. Let's see. Eric, sorry, what was that? You think it's a failure on all intuitive fronts? Yeah, it's a failure of NI, it's a failure of NE, it's a failure of TI, it's a failure of FE, it's a failure of FI, and it's a failure of, the only thing it might not fail on is TE. And the reason, thank you, Lightbulb, I appreciate it. That's very kind of you. I owe a couple people bong rips. You now one I owe a bong rip. Who did I owe that first bong rip to? Let me go back up there and see. I never gave him that bong rip. It was somebody who gave me an L's, which are English monies. Retro Gamer 71. Pounds, they're called. Pound sterling. It's my favorite currency, by the way. I just want to say that. Yeah, I like it even better than US dollars. All right, so first, this bong rip goes out to Retro Gamer 71. I'm going to give you the Devil's Lettuce. This is the first strain that we're smoking today. Devil's Lettuce. If you plant romaine in hell, this grows. Okay. Retro Gamer 71, I transubstantiate this bong rip for you, and thanks for your generous donation. Much appreciated. Hope you weren't driving. Hope it gave you enough notice. That was a bit of a bell ringer, I suspect. I don't know. I don't feel anything. Obviously, when I transubstantiated, all the high goes to the other person. Light bulb. Today, you're going to enjoy this bong rip of purple scissor. Is what this weed is called. Purple scissor. Now, if you aren't familiar with purple scissor out there, those of you who aren't familiar with purple scissor, it is a beverage that young people drink, but not an ordinary beverage, not an alcoholic beverage either. Instead, it's a beverage with pharmaceutical drugs in it, namely, I believe, like codeine and stuff. I think that's what goes into the purple scissor beverage. If there's anybody in the chat here who knows what purple scissor is made of as a beverage, please do share the information. Goodbye, Freddie Chandran. This bong rip of purple scissor do I hereby transubstantiate to one light bulb, and thanks for her generous compensation for the 4 downvotes I've undergone here during the course of this live stream. I transubstantiate thee. Okay. With that, I will say adieu. Have a good morning, everybody. That was the best 2.5 hours of my life. And I hope you enjoyed it as well. Mixed with codeine. Thank you for answering the question, Jason Rodriguez. You can see like rappers like Lil Pump references that beverage. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for being here. And don't forget to eat plain cheese. Yeah, all right. I'll go to that room. I'll go to that period right now.